Africa is a land of vast plains like the Serengeti. And Africa is a land of delicate beauty with graceful creatures like the flamingos. And of magnificent mountains like Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And colossal cataracts like Victoria Falls on the Zambezi. Victoria is twice as high as Niagara. Some of Africa's birds are so large you can feed a family of 10 from a single ostrich egg. Africa has its share of weird and wonderful creatures like the chameleon, which has its eyes set in turrets. While one looks straight up, the other can look straight down, all at the same instant. That's what the boss should have in the office. One of the oddest creatures in Africa is the pangolin. Although it is a mammal, it has scales like a reptile. Termites are the wrecking crew of Africa. In 1 week, they can completely devour a thatched native hut, carrying the bits and pieces of grass into their underground fortress. Africa has its share of poisonous creatures like the boomslang, a deadly tree snake. And there is the puff adder, which literally walks on its ventral muscles. And there is the tsetse fly, which transmits the dreaded sleeping sickness. It feeds solely on blood, which it sucks from the skin of its victim, in this case, the arm of a Briton in Tanzania. After a full meal of blood, his abdomen is so distended he can hardly fly. Many of Africa's plants are equipped with defensive devices to help them survive. But some of Africa's creatures lose in a conflict for survival. Fish are constantly dying in the jaws of crocodiles. A turtle dove falls prey to a fast-flying falcon. Predators must prey on others, for without death, there would be no life. And here in Africa, life constantly regenerates itself. Young antelope are thrust into a strange and often cruel world. They are frequently the victims of crocodiles. They are also often the victims of lions. But large animals like the Cape buffalo are sometimes, though not always, successful in beating off an attack by the king of beasts. A lioness locked her jaws on the throat of this wildebeest in a vice-like grip from which it could not escape. Newborn crocodiles rarely survive beyond the first week, falling easy victim to servals, civets, birds of prey, and even their own parents. Jackals have much to fear from giant eagles. The Marshall eagle is the largest and fiercest eagle on the continent of Africa. He has a wingspan of about 7 feet, and he eats monkeys, snakes, lizards, rabbits, and rodents. He is a very powerful, very spirited bird. Baby leopards have much to fear from other predators until they grow big and strong enough to defend themselves. And Africa has its share of large, dangerous animals like the rhinoceros. The natives of Africa are just as unusual as its wild creatures. For example, there is the Banyarwanda tribe of the former Belgian Congo, which has the odd custom of chipping their teeth to points, because in their estimation it enhances their beauty, and besides, they can make out better in a fight. When this fellow bites, he's going to make a good impression. They strike the top of a knife blade with a steel rod, and with each strike they knock a chip off the tooth. It's a very painful process, and this man will have great difficulty eating or drinking for about 3 weeks. And believe it or not, he actually pays to have this done. Now let's see what progress he made with that lower tooth. A bit of an argument ensues because the patient, or should I say the victim, is willing to pay 5 francs, but the dentist wants 10 francs. This woman is very excited about the whole thing. Some men earn their living by capturing Africa's wild creatures for sale to zoos. One of them is yours truly, capturing a python in Zambia. The technique is to stand just outside of striking range. You have to watch for his teeth. He has long, sharp teeth. And then at the right moment, you grab him by the head. I packed this python in a comfortable wooden crate and sent him by air to my tax collector as a Christmas present. This python is larger than the first. The larger they are, the easier they are to catch because the slower they strike. But, of course, the longer their teeth, so you have to exercise a little more care. This snake weighed more than 100 pounds. I travel across the vast expanses of Africa in my pickup truck. And my objectives on this trip, in addition to capturing animals for zoos, are to bring back specimens of a new subspecies of Egyptian cobra for the American Museum of Natural History, and to assist Uganda government surveyors in mapping an unexplored section of the Mountains of the Moon, and to get a taste of high adventure in the years that lay ahead. I often travel off the road, and sometimes my only means of navigation is a compass. If I head for the ridge in the center, I'll be right on course. I pitched my camp here in Tanzania, and one day, as I walked to my safari truck, I saw a startling sight. A full-grown cheetah. I ran for my rifle because in this district, cheetah are classed as vermin since they kill so many domestic animals, and the government encouraged me to collect any I found. But cheetah are the fastest four-legged animals in the world. Chances are this fellow is half a mile away by now. In most countries and colonies of Africa, cheetah are classed as royal game. That is, you are not permitted to shoot them under any circumstances. But in this district, it's just the reverse. Oh, well, it's a nice sunny day, so I think I'll go for a walk through the veldt and see what wildlife this district holds in store for me. Legged animal. This rhino is standing just about where I have to walk because there is marshy ground to both left and right. I'm going to skirt as far to the left as I can, but I don't want to provoke him if I can help it, since I don't have a rhino on my game license. This rhino weighs about 2 tons, so game license or no game license, I'm going to slip a cartridge into the chamber just in case. But I'm not going to shoot if I can possibly help it. One step closer, and he would have gotten a bullet. Nope. You just can't go for a walk nowadays. Rubies. Tanzania is rich in minerals, particularly in gemstones. And practically every rock on this outcropping had about 8 or 10 rubies in it. These are genuine rubies. But I didn't have a geologist's hammer or a pick, and I couldn't very well get them out with my fingernails or my teeth, so they're still there. I got out my pocket chart and made a notation of exactly where this place is in case I decide to come back someday and put a road through here. Here in Tanzania, flies are a scourge to man and beast alike. Looks like a couple of Thompson's gazelles squaring off for some sort of match. Don't look now, but I think there's going to be a fight. I knew it, I knew it. I fought like that once, and just look what happened to me. By George, looks like a fight. Lions, a pride of 6, 1 hiding up in some rocks and 5 out in the open. The best thing to do in a case like this is to walk right on past and show no sign of fear, because contrary to what most people think, lions do not normally eat people. If you run from a lion, he's bound to give chase. That is the worst possible thing you could do. But lions are like people. They all have different personalities. Where one will decamp, another will stand his ground. This third fellow seemed even less inclined to move than the first 2. The next 2 didn't even look friendly. Notice the hair on the back of his neck. Nope, they're just putting on a performance. This is simply a demonstration to try to frighten me off. They don't really mean it. This last fellow was a downright coward. Guinea fowl are common here on the plains of Central Africa, but they have many natural enemies, and they must be constantly on the alert because sometimes death stalks just around the corner. In the uppermost branches of a tree high overhead sits an African hawk eagle, and he scans these guinea fowl very intently because he is hungry. This is how he captures his prey. Like all birds of prey, he kills with his talons, not with his beak. Birds of prey use their beaks only for shredding meat into bite-sized pieces and do not attack or defend themselves with their beaks. Vultures, hundreds of vultures. And as I look below, I see the cause of it. A hyena is dragging a wildebeest carcass through the water. He's got it there so the vultures and jackals can't get to it. He's been feeding on it for so long, he just can't take another bite. But he'll be darned if he'll let anybody else have any. Vultures wait patiently. Others soar overhead. And the jackals wait patiently. Well, now it looks like he's had his fill and the vultures wade in. Vultures spend more time fighting with one another than they do in getting down to eating. They never do seem to get along with their own kind. I found a baby chimpanzee, and at first she was trembling with fear, but in a few minutes she grabbed my jacket with her little fists as if she was looking for protection from the big bad world around her. I guess she thought I looked like a reasonable facsimile of her mother. I called her Trudy, and she now lives in a zoo in America. At this point, she had a tummy like a beach ball and a face like a dried-up prune. She was a very clever little ape. Within 3 or 4 days, I taught her to come to me when I called her by name, which is pretty good going for a wild creature. Next day, her relatives paid me a social call and stole some food from my truck. I loaded my truck with animals for the trip to the nearest airport. This is a cheetah cub. Next, a large crate of colorful East African lovebirds, also known as Fisher's parakeets. And then we loaded boxes of poisonous snakes. I extended the range of my truck from the normal 300 miles to better than 1,000 miles by carrying these spare jerry cans. Now watch how Trudy grabs my bush jacket with her little fists. Once she gets hold of me like that, you just can't get her off. If you try, she will scream and cry like a little baby, and it's tough to drive with her between you and the wheel, but she's just got to sit right there. On the way, I saw some Thompson's gazelles, which are characterized by their windshield wipers in the rear. Their chief natural enemy is the wild dog, which gangs up in packs and runs them down. Another one of their natural enemies is the lion. It's no secret this fellow just had a full meal. But their fleet-footedness is the thing that saves them because they can generally outrun their predators. I saw many wildebeest which were having their young about this time of year. Then I came to a tsetse fly control barrier where the government has posted a native whose responsibility it is to check vehicles passing this point for tsetse flies. The driver is obliged to make an entry in a logbook showing how many flies were captured on his vehicle. In this way, the government will have some idea of the effectiveness of its tsetse fly control measures. This is actually one big game because that native will never catch a fly waving that net around the way he does. But the government pays him to do it, so he does it. I made an entry in the logbook showing that no flies were captured on my vehicle. This native told me it had been more than a year since he captured his last fly. The dry season in Central Africa normally lasts about 6 months, but it has been 7 months now since the last drop of rain fell and the ground is growing parched and brown. Streams have dried up completely. The level of water in the lakes has dropped so sharply, thousands of fish are left stranded high and dry to perish. Silt formed at the edges of water holes, making it doubly difficult for animals to get a drink. Butterflies flocked from miles to spots where underground sources of water moistened the soil. Dust devils whirled across valleys. Animals crossed and recrossed their tracks on dry lake beds in a futile search for water. Some animals, like this Cape buffalo, got stuck in the rapidly drying up water holes and died a lingering death. Giraffe love rich green leaves, but in the dry season, the pickings are mighty slim and they have to settle for tiny acacia leaves on branches where the thorns are long enough to pierce their tongues if they're not careful. Natives begged water from me, and out here at this time of year, it was like liquid gold. I gave them as much as I could spare. Smoke from bushfires drifted across the countryside. The hole from which I drew my water was rapidly drying up in spite of the barricade I had erected against wild animals. There was about a 2-day supply left, so something had to be done and done fast. This was a real emergency, so I set my men to digging. This is the first time in the memory of these natives that every water hole had dried up completely, so it was as much of an emergency for them as it was for me. On the second day, the hole was much wider and much deeper, but still not a drop of water. On the third day, we struck water at a depth of 20 feet, and it sure tasted good. But some natives don't have a drinking water problem, like the Maasai tribesmen of Kenya and Tanzania. Instead of their water, they drink blood, which they get right from their own cattle. As long as the cattle can find enough fodder to survive, the men will survive. But some natives don't like the taste of blood. They offer up prayers to their rain god, using as an offering the still beating heart of a freshly killed viper. Then a big black nimbus cloud rolls in like an umbrella, all because of that viper heart. I dug a hole, spread out my tarpaulin, and was able to replace that muddy water with nice, fresh rainwater. And then the rain ran off the open plains and filled the dried stream beds once again, carrying with it lots of topsoil. This is a trying time for travelers through the heart of Africa. Flash floods sometimes make passage difficult. I was traveling cross-country at the time, and I had my problems too. I had this trouble in Tanzania, and similar trouble in Kenya, and again in Uganda, and again in Rwanda. Then the sun came out again, and the animals had a great time with so much water. Elephants came down to the water's edge, drank about 60 gallons, and then flopped onto their sides like little boys playing in a bathtub. And now a touch of color was added to the forests. I headed for the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania, where I'm going to visit my friend Willie de Beer, who specializes in capturing large plains game for zoos. I was his guest on safari for 3 weeks and obliged by giving him a haircut. I always carry barber tools with me when I'm on safari. De Beer is 65 today, but he still lives a rugged, active life. He's devised a method for capturing plains game by chasing them with a pickup truck. He puts one of his men on a front fender, equips him with a long pole to which is attached a rope noose, and when he gets in close enough, this man will try to swing the noose over the animal's head. He has an order for several zebra from zoos in Europe, and he's going to try to capture a colt. He finds that the young animals are less likely to injure themselves than would be the adults after they're captured. Now he has a mare and her colt separated from the rest. Soon he has the colt by itself. Next, the animal takes advantage of a maneuver that puts him far ahead of the truck. He can turn much more sharply than the truck can. He makes a sharp turn to the left, and in 1 or 2 seconds puts an extra 50 feet between him and his pursuers. This is how it looks at normal speed. And now, back to slow motion. There, the animal is ours. But this is a very delicate part of the operation because we're driving at about 40 miles per hour. So we must apply the brakes very, very gradually, or we might break his neck. Now 2 of the men leap off the truck. One grabs him by the tail, the other grabs him by the lower lip. He grabs him by the lower lip because zebras bite viciously, and if one fellow hangs onto the lower lip, no one will lose a finger. Except possibly the fellow holding the lower lip. The first thing we do is tie a strip of eland hide around his mouth so that no one will lose a digit. A zebra has 3 handles, his 2 ears and his tail. Everybody grabs a handle and they march him to the truck. And then they slide him into the cage. But this is easier said than done because zebras don't slide so easily. That rear section is going to be a real problem. Everybody gives a little shove. It doesn't do any good to lift just one leg. The animal is now driven to De Beer's compound at the foot of Mount Meru. Meanwhile, he returns to the camp in his little pickup truck. De Beer has organized a meeting with the local Maasai tribesmen to see if he can find out from them where to find secretary birds. He has orders for secretary birds from zoos, but he hasn't seen any in a long time. And he's going to see if these Maasai can shed some light on their whereabouts. These locals are often a good source of information about animals. One of these Maasai is more interested in looking in my truck mirror than he is in attending the conference. Now that we have word on where to find secretary birds, we're off with the large truck with the cages, followed by the little pickup truck, which will do the chasing. These trucks really take a beating out here in the bush. There's hardly a single part in them that is the original. And these dry stream beds are really rough on spring blades. They break about 2 or 3 a week. We quizzed the Maasai along the way and asked them for the whereabouts of secretary birds, and they confirmed what we learned from the other Maasai, so we know we're on the right track. Whoops, a leak in the radiator. Time out for repairs. Well, it's not much of a problem because this radiator has been out so many times before, these men know it like the back of their hand. It comes out about once a week. It was just 9 minutes between the time they removed it, repaired it, and had it fully reinstalled. They repaired it with a pair of needle-nose pliers, a piece of safety wire, and a bit of chewing gum. Now they hook up the hoses, siphon some fresh water into it, and they're all set to go. Until next week. We perched on a hillock and scanned the plains diligently for secretary birds. The Maasai tribesmen really were a great help. There, we spotted a secretary bird and we're off in a cloud of dust. Secretary birds are large birds of prey worth $400 apiece, which spend most of their time on the ground. They have powerful legs but weak powers of flight. The way to catch one is to chase after him until he becomes so exhausted he can no longer fly. It takes about 40 minutes of chasing to get him to that point. Now this bird is so exhausted, he just can't get off the ground. One of our Africans leaps off the truck and sprints after him like a college track star. This bird is called a secretary bird because it has long quill-like feathers at the back of its ears, which resemble the old-fashioned pens secretaries used years ago. When I left Willie De Beer, I headed for the Congo, where I'm going to visit the Bambouti pygmies. On the way, I crossed the Victoria Nile on this pontoon ferry. These Bambouti pygmies I'm going to visit are the smallest of all the different pygmies. The average man is about 4'7", and the average woman about 4'1". We saw a 5-ton bull elephant feeding on long grass at the water's edge. He didn't seem too pleased to see us. The pygmies I'm going to visit are truly self-sufficient people. They live strictly on the meat they're able to shoot with bow and arrow, on nuts, roots, fruit, and leaves, and occasionally they trade meat to the Bantu for vegetables like corn. They raise no domestic animals nor cultivated crops. They live deep in the Ituri Forest, a huge equatorial rainforest in the eastern part of the Congo. I met a little pygmy boy who led me to their village, and when I arrived here, I was given a warm welcome by these friendly little natives. I'm only 5 feet 6.5 inches, but I look like a giant next to them. The chief, who was much taller than the average pygmy, took me on a tour of inspection and showed me how they honed arrowheads on stones. I'm sure they did it the same way thousands of years ago. Then he showed me how they make fire by friction. They simply rub 2 pieces of wood together, put a knife blade below the lower piece, and catch burning embers on the knife blade. Then they surround the blade with dry tinder and blow gently, and in a few seconds, they have a fire. I tried the same thing the same way, and nothing happened. You've got to be a pygmy. All that work just to light his pipe. Pygmies are expert at braiding, and they use the fibers from long-stem jungle plants to make rope, which is stout and durable. Pygmies love smoking pipes. Young girls smoke pipes. Youngsters smoke pipes as long as they are. And the old men smoke pipes. Pygmies love bananas, and there are about 7 or 8 different kinds here in the Ituri Forest. The kind they like the best is small and green, but it is tough when ripe and must be boiled or fried before it can be eaten. But the favorite food of pygmies by far is honey. The difference between the way a pygmy eats honey and the way anyone else eats honey is that he devours a few live bees along with the honey. He gets stung on the inside as well as the outside. There go a few bees. The ladies decorate their bodies by burning banana peels. They mix the ash with water, and this forms a bluish-black pigment which stands out sharply against their light brown skins. The men of the village don't do this, and they think the women are absolutely mad. They paint their faces the same way, but this pigment lasts only about 3 or 4 days, so they have to go through this whole process at least twice a week. Little boys played strange games that I never could quite figure out. A unique thing about pygmies is that without exception, all the women have masculine faces. Then the chief showed me their favorite musical instrument, which they call a lukambi. It is a hollow wooden sounding board on which they have mounted flattened steel nails, and oddly enough, it is exactly the same sort of instrument natives use in widely scattered parts of Africa. I asked the pygmies if they would like to go for a ride in my truck. They thought this would be a great and glorious adventure. The whole village turned out, in single file. "60 seconds after I drove up, I had 39 pygmies on top of and inside of my truck. I bet the Ford Motor Company never knew they could carry this many people. This fellow said he had a spear he would like to trade with me. Glorious, the whole... I just happened to have a piece of cloth I bought in Nairobi for this purpose. Aha, that really struck his fancy. Well, it's a trade. The spear is mine, the cloth is his. We each thought we got a bargain. Pygmies. This fellow that made the trade with me is a very bashful pygmy. He wants to go for a ride in the truck, too, but he doesn't want to brazenly climb aboard without first asking my permission. I never saw such a polite pygmy before. And now we're off for an exciting ride at all of 2 miles per hour. I was afraid that if I went any faster, I'd lose those fellows on top. After living with these tiny people for a few weeks, I visited a Bantu village at the edge of the forest. It was here that I saw how they operate their old-fashioned muzzle loaders. They pour some black powder down the barrel. Slide in a paper seal. Then drop in a piece of lead fashioned to the shape of a bullet. Whoops, time out for snuff. He can't do his work properly without snuff. He puts as much powder up his nose as he puts down the barrel. Now he cocks the hammer and puts a percussion cap on the striker base. Then he slowly closes the hammer down on it. Now all he has to do in order to fire is simply cock the hammer. Now he's going to demonstrate his prowess with this noisy weapon. Missed by 15 feet. When I arrived in Uganda, I made arrangements with a game ranger to use the launch which the government put at his disposal, because I'm searching for monitor lizards, and these 4-foot lizards frequent the banks of rivers in Central Africa. I'm now on the Victoria Nile between Lake Victoria and Lake Albert, and I'm going to scan both banks carefully for these giant monitors. On the way, I saw many of the colorful birds which are so characteristic of this part of Africa. Marabou storks, pelicans, Egyptian geese, darters, and cormorants. This hippo ran along an underwater plateau, and then suddenly, he stepped off the edge. A yellow-billed kite spotted a dead fish floating on the surface, and he swooped down and snatched it up in his talons. I saw many crocodiles along the banks of this river. Then I saw some cattle egrets landing on a mudbank. Aha, it wasn't a mudbank at all. It was a herd of sleeping hippos. You get lots of surprises out here. Crocodiles often wander far from water at night, but seldom more than 8 or 10 feet from it during daylight hours. They have the odd custom of sleeping with their mouths wide open. Notice all the flies in this fellow's mouth. Boy, I hope those flies don't drown. Then I saw some hippos kissing, and a couple play fighting. Monitor lizards, just what I was looking for. They're digging in a hole in the sandbank for turtle eggs. Monitors like eggs of all kinds, birds' eggs, crocodile eggs, and turtle eggs. And when they find one, they gulp it down voraciously. I disembarked at a landing that the game ranger had erected nearby, and I instructed the crew to return before nightfall with my natives and my camping gear. Meanwhile, I'm going to survey this area for a campsite, which will serve as a base for capturing these giant lizards. The next morning, while my camp was under construction, I went out for a walk. And on what was practically my front lawn, there was a monitor. I made a rush for him, but he turned the tables on me, and for a minute I was wondering who was trying to capture whom. He has very powerful jaws and sharp teeth, and you must be very careful how you grab him not to lose a finger. Well, now it's all over but to grab him by the head. But this is easier said than done because he's not going to cooperate one bit. This is what is known as having a lizard by the tail. I packed him in a comfortable wooden crate and sent him off by air express to my animal agent in America. I packed my animals and my gear in my truck, and I headed for the Serengeti plains of Tanzania. At about this time of the year, lionesses are having their young on the Serengeti plains. They usually have 3 or 4 cubs to a litter and stay with them for about 2 years to protect them from danger when they're tiny and to teach them the fine art of hunting. Lion cubs don't know all the fine points of stalking their prey by instinct. They have to learn these through long, hard hours of instruction from their mother. If they make a mistake, they get cuffed good and hard, and they learn mighty fast. Lions show real affection for one another, pretty much as in the case of human beings. They have a very closely knit family life. But when a lioness has her young, she is usually in a very nasty protective disposition, and this is no time to disturb her or to get too close. But she is very patient and accommodating toward her cubs. She is literally a mobile milk bar out here in the hot, dusty plains of Tanzania. A unique thing about lionesses is that they will nurse cubs from another litter besides their own. They never cared less whose cubs they are. For example, here you'll see that one cub is much larger than the others, which shows that this lioness is babysitting for another lioness who's gone off hunting. Sort of a cooperative society. Yep, life is one big bowl of cherries when you're a lion cub. Ma and Pa do all the work and you have all the fun. These cubs will be full-grown lions in less than 3 years. Adult males weigh about 450 pounds, adult females about 350 pounds. Animals can tell when lions are out to make a kill, and when they know that they're not, they will stand by and let one pass very closely. It's sort of a sixth sense that animals have that lets them know this. But these wildebeest and zebra know that this old boy is up to no good, so they give him a wide berth. Actually, he is frightening them to a point downwind where the lionesses are lying in wait with their cubs, because it is the lionesses that usually do the killing for a pride, not the males. Males will condescend to help, but they leave the dirty work up to the ladies, pretty much as in the case of human beings. There is not a tree for miles around, and it's 110 degrees in the shade. Boy, I wish that old man would hurry up and bring home the bacon. So he accommodates and shifts into second. Now he shifts into high. And this ostrich decides this is no place for him. And these two hartebeests say, boy, let's get out of here. This is no place for us. In less than an hour, there is nothing left but skin and bones. Lions know what it is to go hungry. Sometimes they do without meat for 4 or 5 days. So when they have a kill, they make the most of it while it's available. They literally gorge themselves, leaving nothing behind if they can possibly help it.